If you're over 50 and you still think you have time to figure this out later, this video is going to hurt a little. Not because the window is closed, but because most people over 50 don't even know the window exists. Building wealth after 50 looks completely different than building wealth at 30. The rules change. The math changes. The mistakes become permanent. Charlie Munger understood this better than almost anyone alive. He didn't make his first serious fortune until he was nearly 50 years old. Think about that. The man who sat next to Warren Buffett for 60 years, the man worth over $2 billion, was essentially starting over at your age. And he had a framework, a specific way of thinking that almost nobody teaches. By the end of this video, you're going to understand exactly what Munger did differently after 50 and why the people who learn this now are quietly setting themselves up to retire 10 years earlier than everyone around them. The people who don't learn it, they're going to keep working forever. Picture a Tuesday night in the fall of 2008. A man named Robert is sitting at his kitchen table in Columbus, Ohio. The lamp is on. His reading glasses are pushed up on his forehead. There's a cold cup of coffee next to a stack of 401k statements. Robert is 53 years old. He's worked at the same manufacturing company for 26 years. He's not reckless. He's not lazy. He has a master's degree in engineering from Ohio State, a mortgage that's almost paid off, and 2 kids who are almost done with college. He should feel okay. He doesn't. Because those statements on the table show that his retirement account, the one he's been feeding for 2 decades, has just lost 40% of its value in 8 months. $212,000. Gone. Robert doesn't panic. That's the part of this story that matters most. He does what smart, responsible people do. He calls his financial advisor. He reads the articles. He listens to the experts on cable news who say, stay the course, don't react emotionally. The market always comes back. And then he makes the decision that will cost him everything. He moves it. He moves his entire retirement account into a money market fund. He's 53 years old. The market is terrifying, and he decides, rationally, calmly, intelligently, to protect what's left. The S&P 500 hit its bottom in March of 2009. Then it began one of the longest bull runs in American history. Over the next 12 years, it returned roughly 450%. Robert's money sat in a money market account, earning less than 1%. He wasn't stupid. He had an engineering degree. He understood numbers. He made exactly the kind of decision that felt safe, while quietly dismantling every year of work he'd ever done. When I first heard Robert's story, I had to stop and think, because I realized Robert didn't fail because he panicked. Robert failed because nobody had ever taught him what Charlie Munger learned the hard way before he turned 50. And that lesson starts with understanding why smart people always make this mistake. Here's the thing about the human brain. It was not designed to build wealth. It was designed to survive. When a predator chases you, you run. You don't stop to calculate the statistical probability of escape. You move fast. The problem is your brain treats a crashing stock market exactly the same way it treats a predator. The same ancient alarm system fires. The same chemicals flood your body. And your rational mind, your engineering degree, your spreadsheets, your careful planning, it goes offline. Scientists call this loss aversion. It's been studied for decades, most famously by Daniel Kahneman and Amos Tversky at Princeton. Their research proves something extraordinary. The pain of losing $100 is psychologically twice as powerful as the pleasure of gaining $100. Think about what that means for someone over 50. You've spent decades building something. You can see it on a statement. You know exactly what you have, and when the market drops, your brain doesn't see a temporary dip in numbers. Your brain sees a predator. It sees everything you worked for being taken from you. Warren Buffett once said, and I want you to hear this carefully, the most important quality for an investor is temperament, not intellect. He didn't say portfolio strategy. He didn't say asset allocation. He said temperament. And Charlie Munger spent most of his life studying exactly why smart people fail here. He called it psychological denial, the refusal to sit with an uncomfortable truth long enough to act correctly. Here's an unexpected fact most people have never heard. A Fidelity study looked at which investor accounts performed the best over a 10-year period. They found the top-performing accounts had one thing in common. The account holders had forgotten they had the accounts. Some had died. Some had simply stopped checking. The best investors weren't the most active. They were the most absent. Now zoom out for a second. Robert's story isn't just Robert's story. According to Federal Reserve data, nearly 68% of Americans between the ages of 55 and 64 have less than $100,000 saved for retirement, not because they didn't earn enough, because they made decisions that felt rational and were quietly devastating. Now zoom deeper. Here's where Charlie Munger comes in. And this is the part that changes everything. Munger had a concept he called inversion. He borrowed it from the mathematician Carl Jacobi, who said, "Invert, always invert." Most people ask, how do I build more wealth? Munger asked a different question. He asked, what would destroy my wealth, and how do I make sure I never do that? That shift is enormous. Instead of chasing the next hot stock, you stop making the mistakes that erase decades of progress. Instead of trying to time the market, you remove your emotional reaction from the equation entirely. There's a woman named Sandra, a middle school teacher from Phoenix, who heard about Munger's inversion principle in 2012. She was 51. She had about $80,000 in a retirement account and no real plan. She didn't find a new investment. She didn't switch brokers. She wrote a one-page document she called her stupidity list. Every financial behavior she promised herself she'd never do, written down, dated, signed. Moving money during a downturn, checking her balance more than once a month, making decisions when afraid. By the time Sandra turned 65, that $80,000 had grown to just under $400,000. Not because she was brilliant, because she stopped being stupid on purpose. Before I show you exactly how to apply this, if this is already hitting different, hit subscribe. The Compound Wisdom drops this kind of insight every single week, and what I'm about to share next is the part most people never even get close to. Here's the principle. Write it down if you need to. Building wealth after 50 is not about acceleration. It's about elimination. You are no longer playing offense. You're playing defense. With compound interest doing the heavy lifting for you, your job is to stop interrupting it. Step 1. Understand what compound interest actually needs. Most people treat their retirement account like a savings account. They check it constantly. They react to every headline. They feel responsible when they adjust it, like they're doing something smart. Here's what Buffett has said about this. The stock market is a device for transferring money from the impatient to the patient. If you're over 50 and you have 15 years until retirement, compound interest can still transform your outcome, but only if you stop touching it. Here's the math, and I want you to feel this, not just hear it. A $50,000 invested today, growing at the S&P 500's historical average of roughly 10% per year, turns into $214,000 in 15 years if you leave it alone. But if you move it during 2 market downturns, which most people do, and you miss just the 10 best trading days over that period, that $214,000 becomes $63,000. 10 days out of nearly 4,000, and your outcome drops by 70%. This is what Munger meant when he said most of the wealth in the world is made by people who sit still, not by people who found the perfect stock, not by people who had a great advisor, not by people who read all the right books, by people who learned to do nothing when everything in their body screamed to do something. Step 2, restructure your accounts for the next 15 years, not the last 15. Here's an unpopular opinion. Most people over 50 are invested too conservatively. I know that sounds backwards. Stay with me. The conventional advice says, as you age, move toward bonds, reduce risk. And that advice made sense in 1980 when bonds paid 12%. Today, the average bond yields maybe 4%. Inflation erodes that to almost nothing. If you're 50 years old and healthy, you have a reasonable chance of living to 85. That's 35 more years your money needs to work. Putting 60% of your portfolio in low-yield bonds at 50 guarantees you run out of money, quietly, slowly, without drama. The enemy of wealth after 50 isn't volatility, it's slow starvation. Even I had to unlearn this. For years I believed the get conservative as you age advice. Then I read Munger's actual portfolio strategy, the way he thought about time horizons, about real purchasing power, about what safe really costs you over 20 years. It completely changed how I think about this. Step 3, and this is the most actionable thing you can do this week. Write your own stupidity list like Sandra did. Or take a piece of paper or your phone and write down the 3 financial behaviors that have cost you the most over the last decade. Not just money behaviors, decision patterns. Did you sell at the bottom and buy at the top? Write that down. Did you take on debt to buy something that lost value? Write it. Did you delay starting to invest because it never felt like the right time? Write it. Munger believed that wisdom isn't about knowing more. It's about knowing your own weaknesses better than anyone else does. The people who understood this in 2010, the ones who looked at their behavioral patterns honestly and committed to stopping them, are the ones sitting comfortably right now, watching their accounts grow while everyone else is glued to financial news wondering what to do next. Here's what Buffett understood, and it took him 60 years to prove it, but takes you 60 seconds to apply. The most powerful financial move available to someone over 50 is to become boring. Boring investors hold index funds. They max out their Roth IRA, $6,500 a year if you're over 50. They ignore the headlines. They increase their contributions by 1% every year automatically. They don't meet with their advisor every time the market drops. They let the machine run. And in 15 years, they don't look back at what they did. They look at what they didn't do. That's the Munger lesson. That's the whole thing. And it's available to you right now, starting this week. I want to say something directly to you. You are not behind because you were reckless. You're not behind because you were lazy or irresponsible or not smart enough. You're behind because nobody sat you down and taught you this. Not your school, not your parents. They weren't taught either. Not your employer, not your bank. The system doesn't need you to understand compound interest. It needs you to feel overwhelmed enough to pay someone else to handle it, and then not ask too many questions. That ends today, because now you know what Munger knew. You know what Robert from Columbus didn't know. On that Tuesday night with the cold coffee and the stack of statements, you know what Sandra from Phoenix figured out at 51 and quietly used to turn $80,000 into $400,000. You are not someone who got unlucky. You are someone who was never given this, and now you have it. That changes everything. Robert, by the way, he heard a version of this story 3 years after 2008. He was 56. He re-entered the market. He set up automatic contributions. He wrote his stupidity list. He retired at 69, 2 years earlier than he ever thought possible. It's not too late. It's just time to start. Now you know why building wealth after 50 comes down to elimination, not acceleration. You know the inversion principle. You know the stupidity list. You know why doing nothing is often the highest performance strategy available to you. But here's what I haven't told you yet. There's a second trap, one that's even harder to see than loss aversion. It's called lifestyle creep, and it operates silently for decades. Most people who retire broke aren't broke because they didn't earn enough. They're broke because their spending quietly grew to match every raise, every bonus, every good year, without them ever noticing. The math on lifestyle creep will genuinely shock you, and the fix takes about 15 minutes. Once you know what you're looking for, that's the next video. And I don't want you to miss it. If the compound wisdom helped you think differently today, subscribe. Share this with one person over 50 who needs to hear it. Every word compounds. I'll see you in the next one.